Welcome. Tonight we will step back in time together, not into the grand marble thermae of emperors and generals, but into the quiet corners of Roman homes, where bath time was slower, more personal, and perhaps more meaningful. You will not hear echoes of large public baths, no crowded rooms or splashing voices. This scraping does not harm it, cleanses it, removes the film of the day along with it. Perhaps it removes a bit of the weight of life itself. He pauses between strokes, not out of fatigue, but to feel, to breathe, to let the body remember its shape. Elsewhere in the house, a clay lamp flickers, a child speaks quietly, dinner simmers. But here in this moment, the world is narrowed to oil, bronze, water and breath. When the scraping is done, he dips a cloth into the basin and wipes gently, not to polish, but to remove what remains. His skin is soft, clean and lightly scented with olive. A kind of peace follows. He reaches for a small jug, pours a final stream of water, washing his hands and arms, letting it run down and into a low clay gutter beneath the stool. Then, from a nearby shelf, he takes a linen cloth and wraps himself loosely. There is no rush to dress. Not yet. The air in the room is still warm, still quiet. He sits and waits, letting the body cool, letting the calm take hold. Perhaps he closes his eyes, not to sleep, but to rest, to notice how much lighter the world feels. When clean, this was bath time for many Romans, unseen, but no less important than the grand events carved into marble or written in scrolls. This quiet moment, this simple oil, this bronze tool, spoke of dignity and of care. It was a way to feel human, to feel whole. Even in the humblest of homes, let us stay here a while. In this soft moment, before the next chapter begins, let the lamp flicker, let the room dim, and let the scrape of the strigil fade into silence. Where did you start listening tonight? Was it at the beginning, or did you find yourself here somewhere in the middle? Let us know in the comments, and if this quiet journey helped you rest, consider subscribing. There is always more gentle history to come. This is a different kind of bath, a private one, often quiet, always careful and filled with small tools and simple gestures. Let us begin our journey. At the end of the day, the sun hangs low over Rome. Its light turns golden as it touches terracotta rooftops and marble steps. Shadows stretch longer, and the city begins to breathe slower from the narrow windows of upper rooms. Curtains stir in the warm breeze outside the household walls. The noise of the street still hums softly, but within the domus, something peaceful stirs. We are in a modest Roman home, a few rooms joined around a small open-air courtyard. Perhaps it belongs to a craftsman or a clerk, maybe a retired soldier. A wooden door creaks open. The resident returns from a day's work. His sandals leave faint dust on the mosaic floor. He carries a small jar of olive oil, a cloth and a metal strigil. There is no bath in this house, no large tub, no furnace heating great vats of water, but there is a basin, a shallow ceramic bowl and a clay amphora filled earlier from the public fountain down the street. He enters the atrium. The air is still, quiet, only the gentle crackle of an oil lamp nearby. The flame moves slightly as he passes. He removes his tunic slowly, carefully folding it and placing it on a wooden bench. This is his moment of stillness and preparation. He sits on a low stool just beside the basin and dips a hand into the water. It is cool, but not cold. It has sat long enough to lose the sharp edge of the morning chill. He pours a little over his shoulders, not enough to soak, but enough to refresh. He opens the jar of olive oil, plain and golden, not heavily scented, just warm from the room. He pours a small amount into his palm and begins to rub it gently across his skin. The oil spreads slowly. It gathers dust, sweat, the remains of a long day under the Roman sun. This is not luxury, it is ritual, a cleansing with simple means, one learned from elders and past, along with care. Next comes the strigil, a smooth, curved blade of bronze, cool to the touch. He holds it lightly and draws it along his oiled skin. The scrape is not harsh, it is deliberate, measured from shoulder to elbow, from chest to waist, a soft metallic whisper each time. Bathing in the Roman world was not just about the water, it was about the rhythm of the day, a series of small steps, and brought the mind toward quiet. That brought the body back to itself, but with quiet hands and patient time. This was the evening ritual, the private bath, a ceremony of calmness done not with grand gestures. Some families shared the tools, passing the strigil from one to another, wiping it clean, each person waiting their turn, not with impatience, oiling it gently, but with respect. Others kept their own, a personal tool, a small thing, set on a shelf near the basin, yet treated with care, wrapped in cloth. In poorer homes, where even olive oil was scarce, people would sometimes use sand or ash, mixed with water rubbed across the skin, then scraped away with a broken shard of pottery, not as elegant but still effective, still soothing in its own way. Their giggles muffled by tiredness, their small limbs splashed, gently cleaned, dried and wrapped for sleep. Their skin rubbed with warm oil, their backs scraped softly in these homes. The bath was not a luxury, it was an act of quiet discipline, a way to hold on to dignity. The bath found a way to live in every home. These are the forgotten parts of Roman life, and let the world outside grow dark. You are safe here, you are clean, you are still. The unseen moments the evening has deepened, the scent of olive and wood smoke, when the streets outside offered little children were bathed with cloths dipped in the same basin. Old people too would sit near the hearth, but a corner set aside, their feet washed in silence by the same hands they once bathed. When young bathing was care, bathing was time, bathing was family. Even without the grand halls and marble walls, the sound of water poured slowly from clay, the touch of metal across skin. Let us stay in this home a little longer. These small things filled the space where luxury could not go, and begins the same slow ritual. It smooths the skin, brings warmth to tired limbs. Let the night settle fully, let the air grow cooler, and let the oil lamp flicker down to its last quiet breath. No need to move, no need to speak, just feel the warmth of water and the softness of linen. The remains of the day, ash from the stove, dust from the courtyard, a fine layer of labor and life. But they mattered perhaps more than the rest. Let the day end now, let the home fall to silence. Let the strigil rest beside the bowl, carefully, lovingly. Then she dries her hands and reaches for her comb. The comb is carved from wood, polished smooth. She draws it through her hair. No rush to be done, only the comfort of routine, and the knowledge that this moment is hers alone. She finishes by dipping her cloth in warm water elsewhere. A child begins to doze on a low mattress. We remain in our modest Roman home. The oil lamp flickers a little lower now. Its flame is steady but tired, starting at the ends, working gently upward in this quiet corner of the home. Just like the man who sits nearby, wrapped in linen, still slightly damp from the water and oil in another part of the house. His wife prepares her own space. There is no separate room for her. A basin, a folded cloth, a simple wooden comb. She, too, has finished her work. Perhaps she spent her day weaving or preparing food or speaking quietly with neighbors in the courtyard. Now her hands move slowly. She gathers her hair away from her face, twisting it into a loose knot. She sits down, places a small amphora beside her. Her olive oil is mixed with a faint fragrance, maybe rose or lavender, not strong, just enough to lift the scent of the room. She pours a small amount into her palm and rubs it along her arms. Then across her shoulders the oil catches the light in a soft sheen. Next, she lifts the strigil, smaller than the one her husband used, worn smooth from years of use. It moves across her skin with gentle pressure. She scrapes away the oil, and along with it, her breathing is slow, each motion measured. There is no need for mirrors wiping her skin. One slow pass at a time, the day unwinds itself, one knot at a time. A pot of barley stew cools on a stone shelf. A dog turns in a circle before settling near the threshold. The house exhales. For those who could not afford the grand public baths, tonight we turn our attention to the quiet tools of the Roman bath, not the grand boilers or marble benches, but the objects found in a modest home, worn from use, passed from hand to hand, simple and deeply personal. Let us begin with the strigil, a tool of curved bronze. They are not kept only for show. They sit on shelves. They are not locked away in corners on small trays waiting to be used again. There is no rush. The cloth dries faster. Other times the bath must be quick. Water rationed, oil saved, no loud voice calling to finish. No strict schedule, only habit, only quiet discipline. Sometimes in the winter months, coals are lit in a brazier. Nearby, the room grows warm, the oil flows easier, but even then the ritual is never skipped. A splash across the face, a rub of oil on the hands, a pass of the strigil across the arms. Even the smallest version of the bath still carries the meaning. For travelers or laborers away from home, the tools might be packed, carried in a small bag used at inns or roadside shelters. These traveling baths were simple, but still enough. Even a cup of water, a fingerful of oil, and a piece of cloth could bring back a sense of self. Let us imagine a young Roman soldier far from the city in a quiet outpost near the edge of the empire. The air is dry, the ground dusty. He finishes his duties for the day, returns to his tent, then slowly draws the strigil over his skin. and opens a small wooden box inside a tiny bottle of oil, a bronze strigil, a cloth folded tightly. The tools, the slow, steady motions, it did not matter how grand the setting or how poor the home, but inside a ritual is complete. Let us now rest beside these objects, oil jar half full, strigil wiped clean. He pours a drop of oil into his hand, rubs it across his neck, his shoulders. This was the world of the Roman home bath. Humble, soft, enduring, held between the fingers, it glides across oiled skin. He feels whole again wherever Romans went. The bath went with them, not the buildings, but in our quiet home sometimes made of clay. Ash from the cooking fire, all gathered silently through the day. He wipes the blade, folds the cloth around it, and breathes deeply. Sometimes a drop of scented resin is added, a small gift from a merchant, or a rare indulgence from a festival market. The tent is silent. The metal is cold but familiar. The motion brings calm outside. Only the wind he feels clean, and more than that, it waits to serve, not with a splash, but with stillness. Hands are dipped, cloths are rinsed, feet are soaked. Carried back home, balanced on a shoulder, or hanging from a wooden pole, the water rests, taking in the warmth of the room. But the gestures, the essence of the bath remained the same: to return to the body, to shed the day, to rest. The tools were small, but their presence was great. Just enough to coat the hands, sometimes chipped at the rim, but gently one at a time. The cloths to deserve notice. Linen or old wool cut from older garments, frayed at the edges, but soft from many washings. Imagine them in quiet light, laid gently on cloth. Water in the basin, reflecting the lamp above. No sharp edge, no decoration, only smooth metal formed to fit the shape of a hand, pulling away dirt, sweat, dust from the road in wealthier homes. A strigil might be etched with small patterns, names carved into the handle. Bronze polished to a soft gleam. The strigil is plain. It carries no ornament, only memory, the weight of repeated use. Used for drying, wiping, or sometimes just held in the hand during rest. Next there is the small oil jar, sometimes glass, in deep greens or soft amber tones. Not large, just enough to hold the oil needed for 1 or 2 baths. The stopper fits snugly, wrapped in cloth or cork. The oil is poured with care, not quickly, not too much, and begin the ritual. It spreads easily over the skin, gathering what the strigil will later remove. Then there is the basin. A simple vessel, ceramic, often rough, but always clean, filled earlier in the day at a public fountain, losing the sharpness of the morning chill. Not all at once, they carry no dye, no pattern, only the texture of time. A small bench might sit near the basin, just wide enough for one person, polished by use. It creaks slightly under weight, but it stands steady. And nearby a comb, carved from olive wood, the teeth worn smooth, used not only to straighten hair, but to soothe, to pass time, to bring stillness after the bath is done. All of these objects live quietly in the home. Now let us sit beside the small amphora. Once more, the oil within it is not only a cleanser, it is a carrier of scent. A quiet language of the Roman bath scent was never just decoration. It held memory, mood, meaning. Even in modest homes, fragrance was chosen carefully. She dips a cloth into the basin, wipes the child's arms, neck, face, then oils her own hands, rubs them across the child's back. Slowly, softly, the child leans into the touch, eyes half closed, breath. Even this too is the Roman bath, not grand, not loud, but full of care in some families. The bath was taken alone, a quiet moment for reflection in others. It was shared, a time to speak softly, to brush hair, to tell stories. The home bath changed shape, but not spirit. Even slaves and servants, those who carried water, those who lit fires, those who held the oil jars, were sometimes given time to bathe. Not often, not always, but in some households they too were allowed their moment. We must remember that the Roman world was unequal, deeply so, but even within that, the act of bathing in its simplest form could offer a kind of dignity. A slave girl might wait until all others were done, then sit by the basin alone with one small cloth, one small jar, and give herself the care no one else would. A field worker returning late might scrub his hands in silence with only ash and cold water, but still feel cleaner, more himself. Let us imagine now that the oil has been used, the strigil wiped clean, the cloth hung near the fire to dry, the water in the basin still. The room is dark, except for one flickering flame. This is the world of scent and silence, of time, measured not in clocks but in motions. The pouring of water, the rubbing of skin, the drawing of metal, no part of it needed to be grand, to be meaningful. Let us stay with these textures: a smooth jar of oil, a wet cloth cooling in the air, a hand on the back of a neck, the faint smell of rose, the quiet hush of the strigil scraping away the day. Tomorrow the jar will be refilled, the cloths rinsed, the basin emptied and cleaned. The rhythm will begin again, and it will bring, as it always does, a quiet kind of peace, all made slowly with what could be gathered nearby. One popular scent was made by soaking rose petals in oil. The petals were placed in a small bowl covered in olive oil, then left in a warm corner of the house. Over time, the oil would take on the smell, faint, never strong, but soft enough to notice when rubbed into the skin. Another gentle scent came from bay leaves, sometimes warmed first, then pressed into a jar with oil. Bay gave the oil a sharper edge, fresh, almost green. Lavender grew in the outer provinces. It was not always easy to find in the city, but when brought to Rome, it was hung in small bundles from rafters, crumbled by hand into clay jars, a sign of care, a breath of the countryside brought into the home. Some households used myrrh, a resin burned gently on coals, or crushed into oil, not common, but remembered its smell was darker, thicker, resinous, used more often during festivals or to honor guests. Even plain oil with no additions carried a scent of sun, of pressings from the olive grove. It was enough. These soft smells filled the room during the bath, mixed with the warmth of the body and the silence of the hour. There was little talking during bathing, not because it was forbidden, but because the moment asked for stillness. Children might whisper, a parent might sing to soothe, but the mood was always gentle, always low. The bath was a quiet break in the day, a pause, a space where the world slowed, and the breath deepened. In the early morning, some would bathe before the sun rose, while the city still slept. They would rise, step into the cool dark of the atrium, and pour water from the amphora before light reached the walls. The oil would be cold, the cloth stiff, but the silence would be full. In the evening, the bath was different. The air held the weight of the day and the scent of dinner from nearby homes. The basin was warmer, the oil looser, the light softer. In some homes there was singing, not always in words, sometimes just a tune passed down from a grandmother, or made up on the spot, a quiet melody to match the motion of the hands, the scrape of the rhythm of the water being poured. Let us picture a mother now sitting near the brazier, a small child on her lap. The Roman bath at home changed. With the turning of the year, each season brought its own rhythm, its own small challenges, and its own quiet beauty. Even inside, an oil must be kept near the fire to stay liquid, but people still bathe, because they must, and because they choose to. A brazier is lit, and the bathing place is drawn in close. Near the warmth, near the comfort, the oil is poured slowly, sometimes in two parts, first to warm the hands, then to rub across the skin with purpose, with weight. The strigil is cold at first touch, but soon warms from the body. It scrapes away dry skin and soot, and the rest of the long day. In winter, the bath is not refreshing, it is restoring. It brings heat, it brings softness. People leave the bath and step into thick wool wrapped tightly, hair wrapped in dry cloth. Even children grow quiet and dressed and laid down for sleep in winter. The bath is almost a prayer, a way to stay, human feet set by the fire. Voices are low, movements slower, to stay soft in a hard season, as they are dried to stay well. Let us now imagine all these baths together: spring with its scent of new oil, summer with its cool water, and open windows, autumn with golden cloths and herbs in the basin, winter with firelight and careful warmth, but a warm cloth. A quiet room, a moment at the end of the day to return to yourself. The bath follows the year, not as a holiday but as a habit, a rhythm within the home. As steady as the beating of the heart in spring, the air grows softer. A basin, a jar, a cloth, a slow hand, a quiet breath. You carry your own version of this rhythm, and in each season it remains the same at its core. In homes without marble, without fountains, and into something lighter. The same motions as always, wherever you are now, whatever season it is outside your window. Maybe it is maybe not olive oil. Let the sun shift in the sky, the bath will remain, just as it did for those who came before us. The dust clings to everything, sweat gathers before noon, homes draw their curtains, rooms darken. Let the season pass, let the air change, and again in the evening, in rooms lit by oil lamps. And if you feel at peace here, consider subscribing to the channel to help us continue telling gentle stories from long ago. Only stillness, only warmth, only care. Were you listening from the beginning, or did you start from another point in the video? Let us know in the comments. Let us begin with spring, and the wind carries scents of green things. Olive oil poured in this season warms faster in the hand. The basin fills with water that no longer stings with cold windows open, and the scent of the outdoors mixes with the scent of the oilcloths washed and hung to dry in courtyards. Dried flowers, small bundles tied with twine, dropped into the basin to scent the water. The sun returns slowly, gentle, not yet harsh. Children help carry jars of water from the public fountains, splashing their feet as they walk barefoot across the stones. The bath is a renewal, a moment to step out of the long quiet of winter, before quieting and after the bath. Feet are wrapped tightly, but now they feel different, like waking up, like stretching after a long sleep. By summer, the bath becomes necessity, not only for comfort but for relief. The city grows hot, then shaded from the sun. The oil flows easily, almost too quickly, and must be stored in the coolest place that can be found in summer. The bath is taken more than once, perhaps in the morning. With less oil, less cloth, and more water, people bathe in silence, but also with shared glances. Everyone feels the weight of the heat, and the bath becomes a kind of breath. A moment to cool the body and settle the mind. Baths, taken in summer, are shorter, but somehow more needed. The scent of sweat is replaced by the scent of bay leaf, or crushed mint, herbs soaked in water and wiped across the neck and forehead. Sometimes a child is given a whole bowl of water to themselves, to play, to wash, to simply feel joy in the coolness. Then comes autumn, when the winds return and the light begins to dim. The basin now reflects the golden tones of the season, and the oil, poured in low light, seems thicker, more comforting. Baths are slower again, deeper, more quiet as the days shorten. People begin to prepare for colder months. Cloths are warmed near the hearth before use, and the last of the summer herbs are used. There is a sense of turning inward, of preparing the home for darker nights. The bath becomes part of this shift, a pause before gathering. Then comes winter, and with its stillness. Baths in winter are not always easy. Water is cold. The Roman bath, even in its humblest form, was more than a way to remove dirt. It was a return to balance, a way to care for the body. The palms, the wrists, scraped them slowly with the massaged the joints after the bath. The hands were dried gently and often rubbed again. They knew the hands remembered, sometimes scented, sometimes plain. There was no part of the body too small for this care. The scalp oiled with fingertips, and they gave them time to forget that the body is not separate from the self, but part of it with a small cloth. But people knew the shape of their bodies by touch, by the curve of the shoulder. Even those who were ill, or aging, or tired could take part. A shortened bath, a seated wash, a slower ritual, the feel of the knee, the small mark behind the elbow. Even the ears were wiped, the feet pressed with warm cloths. Not every home had mirrors. The body has been tended and spreading it across the skin, not to impress. They returned to that knowing, to their own outline in the bath, to their own skin. The bath reminded them, and our still halls still held. To tend to the body was not vanity, it was wisdom. A bath at home, with warm oil, clean cloth. The outer page of a long story still brought comfort. Caregivers would help, sons would bathe fathers, wives would rub oil into the feet of their husbands, friends would scrape each other's backs with care. A slow breath, let it remain with you now, as the room around you grows quieter. This was not seen as weakness, but duty and affection. The bath was not hidden, it was not shameful, it was simple, open, normal. There was no performance in the home bath, a place where the world entered, and where the inside met the outside to scrape it clean. But here in this room, the Roman bath, without marble, without crowd, without noise, is complete. The cloth is hung to dry. The lamp flickers softly. Only presence, a person standing in a dim room, pouring oil into one hand, feeling its weight, their clothes dusty, their back sore, their thoughts scattered. But to return, let us imagine now the end of the bath, and begin the same ritual they have known since youth. The water is still, the oil jar half full. The strigil rests clean on the stone ledge. You sit wrapped, warm, breathing slowly. The balance returned outside the world may still be loud. You are whole again in Roman thought. Cleanliness was linked to calm, to clarity, to moral life, not in the way of medicine, because care, real care, needs only time and attention. We carry this truth today. Your own hands, the ones that hold to tell it. You are still here in small ways. A warm towel, a quiet room. As the weight of the day fades, you are still here, so that the mind could rest. The Romans believed that the body and the spirit were deeply linked. A servant, a soldier, was expected to keep a clean face, short nails, clear skin, that scraping with the strigil opened the pores. One could return to a steady state because it showed order, it was discipline, and a slow hand was seen not just as comfort, but as practice, a habit of respect for the self. The skin was not just a surface. It was a barrier to rub it with oil, to soak it with herbs, was to clear the day away, not only in the flesh but in thought. The body holds more than movement. It holds memory, strain, worry, breath. And so the bath was used to soften, to stretch, to loosen the fingers, the jaw, the neck, even when only a small amount of oil was available, even when water had to be carried by hand. The bath was worth the effort because it gave back more than it took. Let us sit with that now. The image of someone returning home. They set down their bags, step inside the small basin is uncovered. Water poured, the clay jar of oil opened, the cloth unfolded, the bronze strigil wiped clean from the last. Use no rush, no need for beauty, only care. They begin with the arms, rubbing oil into the muscles, then down the legs, the back where the strain of the day still lingers. The strigil moves slowly, not harsh, just enough to wake the skin. You are still whole. A citizen should be, not richly, but plainly, neatly, modestly, even a worker. The home bath allowed for this, no matter the class, no matter the home, with a jar of oil and thyme. Some believed that certain oils balanced the body as humor, as that warmth of the skin helped digestion and let harmful elements escape. These thoughts were not only medical, they were spiritual. The bath was healing, but in a way of daily peace. Let us think now of hands. That work that carried the Romans paid great attention to the hands during the bath. They rubbed oil into the fingers. Each day in ancient Rome moved to its own quiet rhythm, marked not by alarms or exact hours. And then came rest, perhaps sitting by the window, watching the sky fade, or listening to footsteps on the street below the bath, allowed this shift from outside to inside, from doing to being. Even those who lived alone followed the same rhythm. A merchant returning late would pour a little water into a basin, rub his tired feet, scrape away the sweat of the day, sit in silence while his hair dried, and then sleep. The rhythm of the day held the bath like a thread, always there, always waiting. On some days the bath might be skipped if water was short, if time ran out, if the body was too tired, but it was never forgotten. Its absence was felt, and its return welcomed. We often think of history as filled with events, battles, speeches, ruins, but most of history was rhythm. People rising, eating, bathing, sleeping. The bath was not special because it was rare, it was special because it was steady. Let us think now of how the body remembers rhythm. You wake, you eat, you move, you wash, you rest, not because anyone tells you, but because it feels right. The Roman bath at home fit into this pattern without needing ceremony, without needing praise. It asked only for presence, for a jar of oil, a cloth, a quiet room, and in return it gave back rhythm, softness, order. Even now, you may carry some version of this with you. A moment at the sink before bed, a hot towel across your face, a slow brushing of the hair, a pause. These small acts are modern echoes of ancient rhythms. You do not need marble walls, or public fountains, or perfumes from the East. You need only a place, a habit, a breath. And so the Roman day closed, with oil and cloth, with a still basin and a quiet heart, but by light, sound, scent, routine, and within that rhythm the bath held a small but steady place. Not all Romans bathed at the same time. There was no fixed hour, but the body often knew when it was ready, when the muscles ached, when the feet grew tired, when the air outside began to cool. In many homes, the bath came in the late afternoon, after work, after errands. Before the evening meal, it served as a turning point, a soft division between labor and rest. Let us imagine a home now, modest, quiet, stone walls, cool from the shadow of the day. Inside, a low table has been cleared. A child sits on a stool, watching as water is poured. The room smells of oil and faint wood smoke. A cloth is warmed near the brazier, and the door is shut gently. To keep the moment in this is not a moment of excitement, but of return. Each motion repeats day after day. Oil poured, cloth folded, strigil wiped clean. And in this rhythm there is comfort. The world may change outside, but these motions do not. They ground the family, connect the present to the past, because even in ancient times people remembered how their parents bathed, and their parents before them. These rhythms were not written, but passed in gesture and memory. A father teaches his son to rub oil into his shoulders. A grandmother shows a girl how to clean her feet with the edge of the cloth. A brother watches his older sister dry her hair with the heat of the brazier. No scroll is needed, no rules spoken aloud, only practice, only patience. This quiet learning shaped generations and kept the bath steady even as cities grew, even as rulers changed, the bath stayed. Let us look now at what happened after the bath, when the oil had been scraped away and the body was clean. This was often a time for food, not a feast, but a small plate, a piece of bread, a fig, some olives, a sip of watered wine. Eating after the bath was gentle, not hurried, not loud. The body had been tended. Now it was time to feed it. Simply, the hands that held the bread were soft from the oil, the face relaxed, the eyes quiet. Some families ate together in silence. Others spoke in low voices, telling small stories from the day. The Roman home bath was not just a matter of oil and water. It was a full experience, a moment when all the senses were quietly called back to the body, only to listen. Then light. Most Roman homes did not have bright lamps. The bath often happened in the soft golden light of afternoon, or by the orange flicker of flame shadows played on the walls. The oil glinted in the jar, water shimmered in the basin. There was no need to see clearly, only enough to move slowly. In this light, the world seemed gentler, less sharp, less demanding. The bath was not rushed by the clock, but moved with the pace of the sun. Finally, warmth, not heat, but warmth from the oil, from the cloth, from the stone floor, holding the sun's memory from the breath itself. The warmth told the body it was safe, that the day could begin to soften. The bath was not about being clean in the modern sense. It was about being returned to the body, to the moment. To be surrounded by these senses is to be held. Let us now imagine you are there. You sit on a stool. The stone beneath you, cool but not cold. Your feet rest in water. A cloth is in your hand. You pour oil into your palm. Rub it into your arms, then your chest, then your legs. The scent rises soft and green. Your fingers move without thought, tracing familiar parts. The strigil slides over your skin, a light scrape, not painful, just enough to remind you that you are alive, that this is your skin, your shape. You pause, breathe, close your eyes. The room holds its breath with you. Then you wipe your body with the cloth, slowly drying, soothing. The cloth catches light from the small flame nearby. You feel warm now and still. You wrap yourself in linen. Step away from the basin and sit your body clean, relaxed, present. You do not rush to dress or to speak. You sit, you rest. You listen to your own breathing. This is not indulgence. It is remembering that you are here, that you are whole, that you are more than tasks, more than labor, more than worry. The bath returns you to yourself, with scent, with touch, with sound, with light, with warmth. It began with scent. Olive oil itself had a smell, not strong but earthy, familiar. It carried the warmth of the sun, the memory of the harvest. Some added herbs infusions left too steep for days. Laurel, rosemary, chamomile, bay leaf, mint. Not for luxury but for peace. A small jar opened and the scent rose slowly, mixing with the cooler smell of water, of stone, of clay. Sometimes a bit of ash was added to the oil, or salt to help scrub the skin. These had their scent dry clean. Even the cloth had its own odor, especially after many uses. Linen warmed by the brazier or left to dry in the sun carried the scent of smoke and air. Each bath built a small cloud of smells, soft and slow, nothing sharp, nothing perfumed in the modern sense, only quiet signals to the brain that the day was changing. Then came touch. The bath was done with the hands. No brushes, no tools. Beyond the strigil, the hand knew the body. It found tension in the shoulder, tiredness in the calf, dryness along the elbow. The oil was poured not in haste, but in stillness. The hand moved slowly across the skin, spreading warmth, bringing attention. A hand on the back of the neck, a thumb pressed lightly into the palm. The cloth used in long strokes, not to scrub, but to soothe. Even the strigil, though made of metal, was not harsh. It followed the curve of the limb, the arch of the spine, the shape of the foot. This was not grooming, it was listening to the texture of the body, roughness, tension. Heat, cold. The bath gave time for these things to be noticed and soft. Then sound. The home bath was rarely silent, but the sounds were soft. The drip of water poured into a basin, the quiet scrape of the strigil, the rustle of cloth, the shifting of feet on the floor. Sometimes a voice hummed a tune remembered from childhood, or a quiet chant repeated like breath. Children whispered to each other. Mothers called softly from another room. A log cracked in the brazier. A breeze moved across the shutter. This was not the silence of emptiness, but the quiet of presence. Even in a home with others, the bath moment was respected. Voices lowered, motions slowed. In this sound, the mind rested. It did not need to respond or solve or speak. Not every bath in ancient Rome was done alone. In many homes, the act of bathing was shared, a quiet task performed together, between family, between friends, between companions, even among the elderly. Bathing remained a shared act. A grown daughter helped her mother to sit, lifted her feet into the water, rubbed her hands gently, smoothed the cloth down her back. The mother would sigh, sometimes with pain but often with gratitude, because she remembered doing the same years ago, when her daughter was small. This quiet cycle passed from one to another across years, across generations. Even servants and masters, even soldiers and comrades, tended to each other this way. When someone was ill, a friend might come and bathe them silently, carefully. This was not seen as strange or inappropriate, but expected, natural. The bath was where bodies were returned to peace. And sometimes that return needed a second hand, a second breath. Sometimes the only touch a person received all day was during the bath, and so it mattered in a world without phones, without mirrors, without much privacy. The bath offered a rare space of trust. To let someone oil your skin, to let someone scrape your back, was to let them close, not in passion but in care. Let us remember too, that ancient Romans did not always see the body as something to hide. The body was practical, ordinary, a thing to be tended, not ashamed of. So to be bare, to be seen, was not shocking. It was honest. In the home, among trusted people, this was part of life. A boy might sit beside his father, both bathing in silence, each doing their own work, occasionally glancing at the other, not in judgment but in quiet recognition. This is what it meant to live together. These soft rituals built connection without demands, without drama. They said, "I care for you," without needing words. They said, "We are part of the same rhythm, the same breath." And when the bath was done, when the oil was wiped away, when the cloth was hung to dry, there was a sense of ease, not just clean skin, but a clean moment shared. This is what made the home bath so powerful. Even without marble, even without public fountains, it brought people back to themselves, and sometimes back to each other. These were not loud moments. They did not need many words. They were soft and ordinary, but full of meaning. Imagine a wife warming a cloth near the brazier. She turns gently and begins to clean her husband. Backed, his head bowed slightly. Still from the long day, she moves slowly, carefully, rubbing oil across his shoulders, scraping it away with a small strigil, not with force but with care. She does not speak, nor does he. They do not need to. Their silence is not emptiness. It is comfort. Later she will sit and he will dry her feet carefully, lifting one then the other, wrapping each in the warm cloth, rubbing small circles into her heel, tracing the arch. This was affection, not shown with gifts or public display, but with presence, with gentleness. With time, children too were part of this rhythm. A mother would bathe her child, running her fingers through the child's hair, wiping dust from the cheeks, scraping oil from small legs, lifting the arms, telling the child to breathe. The child would squirm, laugh, splash the water. But in time, they would learn the rhythm too, and one day they would do the same. For their own brothers helped each other, rubbing oil into scraped knees, cleaning wounds, washing sweat from the neck. After labor, sisters shared cloths, sang low songs, braided one another, damp hair as it dried in the evening air. This was a bath, not of solitude, but of closeness. Let us picture a small courtyard, the sun beginning to fade, the shadows long. Two friends sit together, both tired, their hands dusty from work. One reaches for the oil, pours a little into the palm, rubs it between the hands, and begins to clean the other's arms. Not a favor, not an obligation, just a kindness. When he finishes, they switch places. No need to ask, no need to explain. They talk quietly of nothing urgent, perhaps about the bread that day, or the birds nesting in the wall, or the sound of someone walking past in the street. These shared baths built connection, not through great emotion, but through small, repeated acts. To touch someone's back with care, to clean the dirt from behind their ear, to wipe sweat from their neck. These things said, "You matter. I see you. You are not alone." In ancient Rome, bathing was not only for cleanliness or even for routine. It was also for healing. The home bath served as quiet medicine, for the body and for the spirit. When someone was ill, too weak to walk to the public baths, too frail to sit up long, the home became a place of recovery. Asked no questions, because the bath did not need explanation. It needed only presence. When morning came, and a family had lost someone, the bath helped, not as celebration but as comfort. A woman sat quietly, not moving, eyes red from crying. Her sister brought a cloth, soaked it in warm water, wiped her hands, then her arms, then her face. No words, just care. Sometimes the one grieving would not move, would not eat, would not speak, but would allow the bath. And in that the slow work of healing began. Even children learned this to help, to comfort, to soothe. A small boy might see his mother ill and bring a cloth, pour water into a bowl, try to rub her hands like he had seen her do for him. The motions were not perfect, but the meaning was there. In homes where life was hard, where money was tight, where illness came often, the bath was still given. Even a small basin, a scrap of cloth, a few drops of oil could hold healing, because it was not the tools but the time, the stillness, the kindness. Let us think again of touch, not in passion, but in simple comfort. A hand on a forehead, a cloth on a shoulder, a finger tracing along the spine. These things said, you are not forgotten. When a person could no longer bathe themselves, someone else would do it for them. When someone was dying, and the world was falling quiet around them, they were not left untouched. Their feet were washed, their hands cleaned, their face wiped, their hair brushed. This too was a bath, a final one given with great gentleness. It did not stop the end, but it softened it. It reminded the body, even in its last days, that it was still known, still cared for. This too was healing, not of cure but of dignity. And long after the bath, when the person was gone, the cloth still held their scent. The oil still sat on the shelf, the basin still rested where it had always been, and someone else later would pour water into it again. For someone knew there was no rush, no dramatic cure, just warmth, stillness. Touch a shallow basin of warm water, set close to the bed, oil warmed gently by the fire, a cloth wrung out carefully, a voice lowered in comfort. Let us imagine an old man sick with fever, unable to leave his bed. His daughter sits beside him, dipping a cloth into the basin, lifting one arm, then the other, wiping gently. She pours a little oil into her hands, rubs it between her fingers to warm it, then presses it into his chest, not in haste, but slowly, listening to his breath. The scent of chamomile rises, soft, almost sweet. He closes his eyes. This is how healing looked, quiet, kind, present. There were no hospitals in the modern sense, no machines, no medicine as we know it, but there was care, and the bath was often part of it. To bathe someone who was sick was to help their body feel comfort. Even when it could not yet feel strong, oil was massaged into sore muscles, onto joints, stiff from lying still, over skin made dry by fever. The cloth wiped sweat from the neck, from the brow, from the chest. The hands moved slowly, so the sick person would not be startled, so they could feel safe. Sometimes a friend or family member bathed with the ill sitting beside them, so they would not be alone. There was no shame, no discomfort, only care in these small acts. Trust was built, and hope. The bath also helped after childbirth. A woman who had labored long, tired, bleeding in pain, was gently bathed by a mother or by a midwife. Warm water for her feet, oil for her belly, cloth for her face. The newborn, wrapped in linen, rested nearby. These baths were not ceremony, but continuation of life, of rhythm. Even when the body was sore, the bath reminded it that it was still here, still loved, still worth tending. Sometimes a soldier came home, bruised from travel, wounded from war, and someone bathed him, washed the dust from his hair, cleaned the blood from his skin, rubbed oil into his back, spoke no words. Bathing at home in ancient Rome followed not just the body but the world around it. The bath changed with the seasons, with crickets humming beyond the shutters, with lamps flickering on the wall. A breeze moved across bare skin. The oil carried the scent of basil, of time, of long days coming to rest. In autumn the bath turned inward again, leaves fell. The days shortened, the oil returned to the brazier, the claws to the hearth, but not yet with urgency. There was still a golden softness in the air, a warmth that lingered, even as the nights grew colder. Bathing became a way to mark the change. A woman wrapped in linen sat near the window, rubbing oil into her legs, looking out at the trees, not speaking, just watching the bath, offered a moment to reflect, to breathe with the earth. Even the sound of water in the basin felt different, deeper, quieter, as if the world itself were preparing to sleep. Some followed the moon, bathing on certain nights, letting the pale light fall through the window onto oil, onto skin, onto stone. This was not ritual, but rhythm, the rhythm of body and time. Others followed the festivals, the household gods honored with small offerings, and sometimes a clean face, a washed hand, a quiet bath before lighting the lamp. The Roman calendar was full of days for rest, for silence, for remembrance. The bath was part of these too. It was not always about soap or scrubbing. It was about being present in the season, in the hour, in the self. Let us now imagine a year through the bath in January. The water is hot, the oil thick, the breath visible in the air. In April, the breeze carries new green scents, and the oil is thin, quick to spread across skin. In July, the basin is shallow, the oil cool, and the body moves slowly in the heat. In October, the cloth is warm. The oil smells of harvest, and the hands linger a little longer over sore places. Each season offers its own kind of bath, its own kind of stillness, and the Romans, without knowing it, perhaps followed. As naturally as the sun, with the weather, with the sun and the wind, there was no central heating, no light switch, no faucet. Everything depended on the world outside. In winter, the bath was slow and careful. Water had to be warmed by hand, set over a brazier, poured into jars, steam rising gently into the cold air. Cloth was kept close to the fire, warmed before it touched. Skin oil was thick, hard to pour, but once warmed, it spread like sunlight over tired muscles. People bathed close to the hearth, where the stone walls could hold some heat, where breaths hung visible in the air, even in cold. The bath brought comfort. It reminded the body that warmth could still be found, that the day still offered quiet moments. A child might tremble slightly as their mother rubbed oil into their arms, but then grow still as the warmth reached their bones. In these short winter days, bathing often happened in the late afternoon before the sun fell completely, before darkness made the home quiet. It was a way to end the day, to return from the cold street to the safety of home. Spring brought change. The breeze still held chill, but the sun grew stronger. The bath moved from the hearth to the inner courtyard, or near an open window. Water was easier to warm. The oil flowed more. Hilly herbs began to grow again. Fresh mint, green laurel, tiny flowers pressed into small jars of oil left too steep. The air smelled different, lighter, the scent of soil and leaves mixing with olive oil. Children returned from play with dusty feet. Mothers rubbed them clean with quiet smiles, singing under their breath. Bathing was still gentle, still slow, but now with a sense of awakening. The world was warming, and so was the body. In summer, the bath changed again. Now the heat came not from the brazier, but from the air itself. Oil was stored in cool corners, cloth soaked in water to bring relief. People bathed more often. Sweat and dust clung to the skin. The streets were hot, the work was long, but the bath did not rush. It became part of midday, when labor paused. When the sun was highest, a man sat in the shade, pouring water over his arms, letting the oil rest on his skin before wiping it away. No need for fire, no need for warmth, only stillness. Coolness released the body, exhaled. Evenings were longer, and some bathed under the fading light. By now we have seen many sides of the Roman bath at home, not marble, not grand, not carved in stone, but quiet, warm, given by hand, lived day by day. It was a basin in the corner, a cloth folded just so, a jar of oil worn smooth with years. The home bath was not famous, but it was real. It held the rhythm of ordinary people, mothers, fathers, children, elders. It gave relief when days were long. It gave comfort when bodies were tired. It gave quiet when the world was loud, and slowly through every season, through every age, it gave something else to belonging to. Bath in one's own home, to feel the water, the oil, the hands that know you, was to feel rooted. It was a reminder that even without the grand baths, without crowds, without heat from furnaces or silver-scraping tools, the essence of the ritual still lived, because the core of bathing was not the building but the body, not the spectacle and that care, but the care that presence was carried on long after the empire faded, through centuries, through silence, through memory. Even now, when we draw a warm bath or step into a quiet shower, through seasons and silence, when time softens, some part of that Roman spirit remains. The moment when breath slows, when hands meet skin with kindness, or swords. That too is a kind of Roman bath, a bath without the baths. And as we close this long, slow journey through oils and cloth in the simple act of care, thank you for walking gently through time with me. Let us remember that history is not always found in ruins or scrolls. And if this journey helped you rest, sometimes it lives in the basin at the edge of the room, in the steam rising at dusk. If you have been listening since the beginning, or maybe joined somewhere along the way, let me know in the comments when you started. Was it 10 minutes in, or maybe much later? I would love to know. Or simply gave you something quiet to think about. Feel free to subscribe. There are many more slow stories to come. Until next time, may your days be soft, and your evenings even softer.